Hello, Blue Jays fans, and welcome to Sunny Side of the Dome. Sunny Side of the Dome is brought to you by Jays from the Couch. We stream live Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. You can find us on Jays from the Couch's YouTube channel, as well as our Facebook page and Twitter page. We're streaming right there, so you can follow along with us live. If you're so inclined, if you have a comment or a question, please feel free. Love that interaction. And if you can't catch the live version, no problem at all. When you're ready for us, we're ready for you. You can always watch the archive version in any of those places that I just named. So YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. And if you like the content here at Sunny Side of the Dome, there's lots more where that came from at Jays from the Couch. There's Jays from the Couch's main podcast, which is Monday evenings at 6 p.m. That's hosted by Jays from the Couch's creator, founder, head honcho, Sean Doyle. And he does a great job with the weekly podcast. In addition to his own wonderful insights, he's usually got someone there with him to share the load and offer different viewpoints, whether it's fellow couchers such as us, bloggers who cover other MLB teams, and you can get a different perspective there. MLB media, players, Jordan Romano was on a while back, so lots of interesting stuff that way. And if you don't catch the live version, that is actually available as a podcast, so you can download and listen to that at your convenience. Basically, any quality podcast carrier has Jays from the Couch. So Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, you can find us pretty much anywhere. And another unique show that there is that's been on for a while is the On-Fec Circle. That's Tuesday evenings at 6 p.m. And that's hosted by my crazy colleague, the Feckless Wonder, Steve Feck. And you just never quite know what you're going to get on the On-Fec Circle. Steve is very knowledgeable. He's very clever and witty. He's very unique in his perspectives. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes you might think, what the heck are you talking about there, Steve? But it's always interesting. It's never boring. So if you haven't been tuning in, you should definitely do that. That's Tuesdays at 6 p.m. And happy Thursday evening, Blue Jays fans. How's it going? Hope everybody's doing well. The team has certainly been doing well, and definitely lots to talk about there. So winners of 6 of the last 8 games. And it's been a couple of weeks since we've chatted with each other, thanks to a doubleheader 1 week ago today. I certainly wouldn't ask you to watch me when there's a live Blue Jay game on. I'd rather watch the Blue Jays than me, so how can I blame anyone else for feeling the same way? Anyway, before I get to the heart of tonight's order, lots of transactions, and because there's a couple of weeks worth, I'm going to do my best to sort of summarize it rather than going into a bit of detail about each one. So some guys called up or activated from the injured list. So relief pitcher Anthony Castro, he is back. He's gotten into a few games. One in particular, the result wasn't all that great, but talk about that in a bit. Joe Panik, he was on the injured list, and he was activated as well. And Jays fans are certainly happy about that, or at least they were last night when he delivered the game-winning hit. So thanks a lot, Joe. Alek Manoah, definitely lots to talk about there. So he was called up, made his MLB debut, has pitched in a couple of different games with some mixed results there. And definitely very interesting. And Edwards, he was a recent acquisition, and he got into the game yesterday and actually did quite well along with the rest of the bullpen. So sort of maybe coming full circle there a bit, but anyway, lots to talk about there. So these guys have been added, activated, called up, and so forth. Thomas Hatch, so he was sent on a rehab assignment. He made an appearance at AAA, and then unfortunately he was pulled from the game early, the only report I heard was some cramping, and then it was reported since then that Hatch, as well as Ryan Baraki and Julian Merriweather, who are all already on the injured list, that none of them are close to being ready to come back. So that's very unfortunate, though. Those guys are all quite talented when they're healthy. So see how that goes. Stay tuned for more updates, I guess. Ty Tice, my goodness. Poor guy. He was up, down, recalled, sent back down, and then they needed a spot on the 60 on the 40-man roster, and unfortunately for him anyway, Ty Tice was DFA'd. So I haven't heard anything since then. I don't think another team has claimed him, so who knows? Maybe he'll remain in the organization. I mean, he could go the route of Reese McGuire, who was DFA'd. Nobody claimed him. He stuck around as a non-roster player, and now he's back on the roster and on the major league roster and actually doing not that badly. So certainly better than he did last year. So see how that goes with Ty Tice. Some other guys that have gone the other way, either to the injured list. So Travis Bergen, unfortunately, 10-day IL. Kevin Biggio, really unfortunate that he's on the 10-day IL as well. That's one of those things, and it's a comment that I made in a previous show, where if somebody isn't performing all that well and then they end up on the injured list, me, the honest honest, straightforward person that I generally am, I look at that and I tend to think, okay, I'm assuming that they really are injured, that it's not a phantom injury sort of situation, which sometimes you hear about. But if someone's not doing well and then they go on the injured list, you sort of think, okay, well, how long have they been injured? And has that been a part of the reason for their subpar performance? And you kind of maybe hope that it is something explainable like that, and something that when the player gets healthy, that they can do better than they have. I mean, I really like Kevin Biggio. I think he's been a terrific player. What we've seen of him in 2019 and 2020, and I think there's a lot more in Kevin Biggio on both sides of the ball than what we've seen in a lot of 2021. So maybe some of that was due to some injuries. So hope he gets well soon. AJ Cole just recently, yesterday I believe, also put on the injured list. Oh my goodness, how many players have the Jays had go on the IL? But from what I'm hearing, I mean, injuries all across baseball are up over the last full regular season that there was, which is 2019. They're up a significant percent. I should have looked that up. I don't even have the stat, but it's something significant. We're not talking 1 or 2% here. It's double digits. So pretty scary stuff. And then Anthony Kay. So he had blister issues in his last appearance. So he was optioned and then he was activated so that he could be put on the injured list. Made a rehab appearance at AAA, and then he was activated only to be optioned again. So Anthony Kay is back at AAA, and he'll be there for however long, and we'll see how that goes. Jeremy Beasley, my goodness. Poor guy. If there's a roller coaster, what's the closest roller coaster between Florida? What is that? Disney World and in Buffalo. I don't know what's close to Buffalo, Coney Island, or is my geography way off? But if there's a roller coaster, you'll find Jeremy Beasley on it, because he's already been up and down and up and down and up and down. I don't know how many times, like even just in the last couple of weeks. Poor guy. You kind of feel for those guys that they probably don't know which end is up after it keeps happening. And there always seems to be someone year after year after year that's on that shuttle between the majors and wherever AAA is. So, and bit more interesting news. Patrick Murphy was actually sent on a rehab assignment. I think he spent some time earlier this year with the Dunedin Blue Jays, and now he's been moved up to AAA, so that's really good. Got into a game, and yeah, he's a pitcher. He made his MLB debut last year, and he actually pitched quite well for the Jays out of the bullpen. So that's a name to keep in mind, and maybe he's someone who can actually help the MLB team a little later on this year. Excuse me a second. All right, so on to the heart of the order for this evening. So the Blue Jays are moving up in the world. They're moving north, but both literally and figuratively speaking. So first, the literal part. They finally wrapped up the portion of the schedule where Dunedin is the home away from home. And now the home away from home is Buffalo, Salem Field, where they played their home games most of last year while they were, before they were getting it ready. And I think they had to share a home stadium with the Washington Nationals for a couple of games there. So that was interesting. But anyway, yeah, the Dunedin, as much as it's nice for a spring training park and a minor league park. And yes, they did renovations prior to 2020. And well, we all know what happened to that season. But I mean, there was at least part of spring training there until spring training got shut down. And as nice as it is in that way, it's not a major league ballpark. The players knew it. There were comments. And perhaps most disappointingly, and I'll be honest, I don't know about you guys, this isn't something that I myself would have predicted. If you had told me before the season started that, okay, well, Jays are going to play in Dunedin for a couple of months, but the fans that go really won't be cheering for the Jays. That's most of the fans that are there and who cheer will actually be cheering for the opponents. And that must be a really deflating feeling. I mean, when you're a professional sports player and you've got your home venue and then you're on the road, I mean, you at least want the crowd to be on your side when you're at home. I mean, I can almost kind of, but not really, sympathize with Seattle Mariners fans when the Blue Jays go there once a year and Blue Jay fans just kind of take over the stadium. And I mean, you're watching it, and most of the time there's more cheering for the Blue Jays than there is for the home team, the Mariners. And they, as a Blue Jay fan, I love it. The Mariners and their fans, they probably don't love it so much. I mean, sometimes they're pretty vocal and can understand why after the last couple of months. So they're in Buffalo. They've only played 2 games there so far, June 1st and 2nd. And honestly, just watching the games, I wish I had the chance to go to a game, but it's not going to happen as long as they're there and as long as the borders are closed. But just having the ability to watch the games on TV, see people in the stands, see a majority of those people wearing Blue Jays memorabilia. And I mean, you've got your vaccinated and your non-vaccinated sections. Want to try to be as fair to everybody as you can, while at the same time, if you've got people who are fully vaccinated and don't mind providing that proof of being fully vaccinated, they can sell every seat in that section. So much for the better for them as a business. And just seeing those people and hearing them cheer for the Jays, and yeah, it's it's so heartwarming as a Jays fan. I mean, not only is it a step back toward normalcy, but just to actually be able to play in front of a crowd that is cheering for you and not the opposition. And who knows? I mean, in the victories, and yesterday was a walk-off in the 9th inning, a come-from-behind victory. Who knows? to what extent having the home crowd on their side actually made a difference. I mean, it's one of the things that I always say when I'm talking about the game is they're not robots. They're human, and there is always going to be the human aspect and the human element of the game. So just having those emotions and getting pumped up and hearing the fans cheering for them in that way, you never know to what extent that might have made a difference, a positive difference. So fingers crossed that it continues. They're still at home away from home over the weekend. Next up, the Houston Astros come in. Should be an interesting series. And yeah, so moving north, quite literally, playing in Buffalo for the foreseeable future until such time as they are allowed to come back to Toronto. Nobody knows when that's going to be. Nobody knows for sure if that's going to happen in 2021. I refuse to believe that it won't happen this year until I hear if it ever happens. If I hear that it's definitely not happening, well then I, along with every other Blue Jays fan, will just have to deal with that. But until then, I'm I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I'm remaining optimistic. So that's the geography of it. Now what's been happening with our team on the field? Well, lots of people, and understandably, they had a 6-game losing streak, and people kind of get down as fans. What's going on with this team? Have we expected too much? I mean, people say that they're going to be contending this year. Well, most people do. Some people say no, they're not making the playoffs this year. But feeling like maybe those expectations, the positive ones, were a little bit overblown. And you know what? Losing streaks happen. If you know baseball, it's 162 games, and these happen almost every year. And I mean, even playoff teams, sometimes even a championship team will go on a little bit of a losing streak. But if you're good, if your roster is that good up and down, you'll find a way to turn it around and get back to winning. And the Jays have done that. They've won 6 of their last 8 games. I'm really happy about that. I'm really excited. They won 2 series on the road, 2 games to 1. And yeah, last Sunday's game, unfortunately, that was also a winnable game, and it just got away from them. And a lot of people were very much crucifying Charlie Montoyo, and I think his decisions definitely played a role. I am not going to pin all of this on him. I mean, if Espinal, whose defense has been very good for most of the season, if he doesn't make that error, maybe Steven Matz goes deeper into the game. Maybe the Jays win. Tyler Chatwood, who had been very good for most of the season, unfortunately, his last couple of outings, not so much. If he had been anything like the Tyler Chatwood that we'd seen for most of the season, then the Jays definitely do win. And then there's Montoyo. Why exactly did he leave Chatwood in when he was walking the house? I don't even know the answer to that. I mean, in Chatwood's previous appearance before that, he also really didn't have his command, and Montoyo took him out, and Chatwood was visibly upset about being taken out in favor of Travis Bergen, who unfortunately didn't do any better, and that was also a game that the Jays lost. That was part of the 6-game losing streak. So, I mean, was that a part of it? Was that Montoyo saying, okay, you're a veteran, you know yourself, you know your own body. If you're saying, leave me in, I would have sorted it out, and I would have gotten the win home for us. Maybe he said, fine, let's see it. Not in a negative way. Some people actually suggesting that he did that to spite Tyler Chatwood, and I don't know where you came up with that. Personally, I don't agree with that at all. But anyway, that was a winnable game, and unfortunately, it got away from them. And all I can say is, I hope those involved learn from those things, and I hope that we don't see those sort of occurrences again. Because if we keep seeing something like that over and over and over again, that's when I really question somebody's performance, either as a position player, a pitcher, or even as a manager. We're all going to make mistakes once in a while. We're all human. So take the bad with the good, learn from the bad, and hopefully do better in the future. Excuse me a moment. All right, so yes. So what has been working well? Marcus Semien, my goodness, when the Blue Jays signed him as a free agent, who could have envisioned him performing this strongly? I mean, his best season, and this is an MLB veteran, his best season by far prior to coming to the Jays in 2021 was in 2019 with the Oakland A's, and he was a top 3 vote getter for American League MVP. Well, if anything, and I know it's been 2 months and not 6 yet, but if anything, he seems to be on pace to exceed that performance in 2019. Wow. I mean, he was sort of, to me, he was sort of the signing that happened with a little less fanfare, at least in terms of the position players. Of course, we know George Springer. He got the big contracts and the big money, and there was lots of publicity, lots of hype. And I'm still very, very hopeful that Springer, once he gets healthy, whenever that is, he'll come back and he will be a big contributor. Well, as we know, that hasn't happened yet. He hasn't been healthy. He's played all of 4 games for the Jays. And Marcus Semien, Player of the Month for the month of May, absolutely very well deserved. All-Star Game voting has started, voting online, and Semien really does deserve to be an All-Star this year. So hopefully he'll be going with the game, to the game, playing in the game, as well as along with his teammate Vladimir Guerrero Jr. What can you say about Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? He has become the player that everybody, all the scouts, everybody who knows the game said that this guy was going to be a generational talent. And at the age of 22, in his 3rd season in the majors, he looks every bit like the player that the Jays thought that they were getting and that the fans thought that we were getting. I mean, he's been phenomenal. He leads all of MLB in OPS. And to boot, as well as what he's doing on the offensive side of the ball, which is absolutely great, he's turned himself into a pretty decent fielding first baseman. I mean, it's great to see, as opposed to last year. And last year, unfortunately, their defense at time was really a comedy of errors, literally and figuratively. And Vlad's defense at first base was certainly a part of that. And he's obviously really worked on that, and he's really turned it around. And it's just so great to watch him play. So those 2 should definitely be all-stars for the American League this season. And if Vlad keeps playing the way he is, and I personally, I see no reason why he shouldn't. I've talked about it before. I see him very much in the conversation for American League MVP, possibly even the winner, possibly even the front runner there. So lots of baseball still to be played, and we'll see what's going to happen with all of that. So yes, Patrick Murphy, I mentioned him before. So it's been very interesting what's going on with the pitching staff. Early in the season, when the Jays did well, a big part of their success was the bullpen. The bullpen was just phenomenal in terms of their success. Both guys that have been around for a while, guys we've heard of, even guys that the Jays kind of plucked from other organizations like Anthony Castro and Joel Payamps, and just that it seemed like almost everybody in their bullpen was firing on all cylinders. And really, they had to be, because the starting pitching, I mean, you've got Ryu, you've got Robbie Ray and Steven Matz, and for most of the season, those 3 have been pretty reliable when they've out there. Ryu and Ray have spent some time already on the injured list. Knock on wood, hopefully that won't have to happen again. And but I mean, they've all had their subpar outings at times, but for the most part, you put one of the 3 of them out there, and you pretty much know you're going to get a good outing. The other 2 spots in the rotation have been a bit of a revolving door, and in a lot of cases, the performance just didn't warrant leaving them out there for extended innings. I mean, the good news is that when somebody is pitching well and their pitch count isn't ridiculous, that they've been allowed to go into the sixth or seventh inning, as opposed to last year. And some people were all conspiracy theory, and that's it, and you're just never going to see guys go deep into games again, and the whole game is changing in that way, and not for the better. Well, I always felt that part of it was very 2020 specific because of all the crazy circumstances. And I'm very happy to see guys going into the sixth or the seventh when their performance warrants it. What happened, unfortunately, is that the Blue Jays bullpen became so overused and overworked that they really started to regress in a lot of ways. So not only injuries, but even when guys are out there, just not performing like they had been previously. And unfortunately, it was somewhat predictable. Well, something great that has happened over the last dozen games or so is that the starting pitchers, for the most part, I think there might have been two subpar performances, one by Robbie Ray and unfortunately Alek Manoah last night, who I haven't really talked that much yet about, and I will get to him. But for the most part, over the last dozen games, you've got the starting rotation, and you include, if you want to include, the outing by Ross Stripling, where he didn't actually start the game. Trent Thornton did as an opener, and then Stripling came in behind him and pitched 7 shutout innings on a day when, by the way, the Tampa Bay Rays scored 14 runs. So it's not like this is an offensively poor team or an offensively slumping team. Holding a team that is capable of scoring 14 runs in a game, scoreless for 7 innings, that's no small feat. I'm digressing a bit, though. So anyway, over those dozen innings or so, dozen outings, the starting pitching has actually done very well. They've had an ERA in the 2s, so that's really good. And again, when they perform that well, they go deeper into games. The Jays have also had, due to weather, they've played a couple of double headers. And as you know, this year, and we don't know about in the future, but for now, double headers are 7-inning affairs. So if you've got a starting pitcher doing pretty well, maybe pitching 5-6 innings, and the game itself is only 7 innings, then you throw in some off days. And the good thing about it is that it's allowed the bullpen to get rested. And to whatever extent the challenges that the bullpen has been facing is due to overwork, well, maybe this gives them a break, and maybe they can regroup and get back to being a strength. And actually, we may have seen a bit of that yesterday. So Alek Manoah, the anticipated, will they or won't they, or are they going to call him up, or are they going to leave him down at AAA, where on one hand, hitters seem to be overmatched against him. On the other hand, you don't want to rush his development if he's not completely ready. So called him up. He started the first game of the doubleheader last week in New York, and really, he couldn't have pitched any better. He pitched 6 shutout innings, lots of strikeouts, his mom in the stands going nuts, and getting almost as much TV time as Manoah himself. So he did great. Everybody's all excited. And then he pitched again yesterday. Unfortunately, the results weren't as good. He gave up, was it 3 home runs? Yeah, three home runs on 4 runs on 3 home runs, and didn't make it through the 5th. The good thing is he didn't seem discouraged even when he gave up some runs. He still stayed in there and battled. He still got some strikeouts. It didn't seem to shake his confidence. Only he knows how he felt about it, but outwardly at least he still seemed to be okay there with the mental aspect of the game. So maybe the Jays have sorted out their rotation. The offense is doing very well. Lots of guys doing great. The bullpen, maybe they've been able to reset lately. And that brings me to another point. So going back to Patrick Murphy. So He's playing down at AAA right now. He actually made his MLB debut in 2020, and he got into 4 games, pitched 6 innings, and he had a 150 ERA. So if the Jays are looking for bullpen help, which they very well might be, and here's a guy who's had success, who's got talent, he's got a good arm, and he's relatively fresh. It's not like he's been overused or anything so far this season, knock on wood again. So maybe he's someone who they can look at calling up sometime in the not too distant future, and maybe he can actually help them out with some quality innings. So we're almost at the end of today's episode, which brings me to Through Blue Jays Colored Glasses. So looking at the Jays, looking at their recent success, and then looking forward, what do I see for this team in the future? So, and I mean, this is something that I've brought up on the show previously, that tracking by strength of oppositions, the Blue Jays up until this point have had one of the more difficult, if not the most difficult schedule in all of Major League Baseball. They're still in the hunt. They're, I believe, 1.5 games out of the second wild card spot as of now, as well. And I really got to start writing more of these things down. They're close. They're reasonably close to the division lead. I think 4.5 games with 4 months to go. I mean, really, that would be relatively easy, assuming that they play well, to make up a deficit like that when you have that much time. So over the next couple of weeks, they've still got some fairly tough opponents on paper. They're playing against some guys who are ahead of them in the standings, either for the division or for wild card, or in some cases both. That's the pessimist could say, well, they've got all these tough games ahead of them. The optimist could look at it as this is an opportunity to gain ground on teams that are ahead of them in the standings. So let's hope that happens over the next couple of weeks. After that, when you look at their opposition, at least on paper, and the games are not played on paper, they're played on the field, but their opposition, in theory, gets a heck of a lot easier. And I can see the Jays, all they have to do really, I want them to gain ground, but all they really have to do over the next couple of weeks is hang in there and not lose ground, and definitely stay in the middle of the race. And I can see them really going on a big run after the next couple of weeks. They've got the opportunity to beat up on some subpar opponents, and I think that they will. They're improving. Just the guys that they've got on the field now, they're improving organically. There's a bunch of guys on the injured list, and I'm not saying we're going to get all of them back. Unfortunately, we won't, but we should hopefully at least get some of them back and playing well. And like I said, maybe the possibility for Patrick Murphy, maybe some other call-ups, other guys down there who can hopefully work things out. And then we're getting closer to July, and the possibility of some impact trades. So we'll see how that goes. But I feel very good about this team. And I keep saying it, and I'm not wavering. This is a playoff team this year. I absolutely believe it. On that note, that's all I've got for you this evening. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's go Blue Jays, and see you again next week.